And for those of you who want a translation of bee in his bonnet, Angus will provide it later on. I know when, as a Canadian, I have sent graduate students to do research in Australia. I tell them to go early so they can learn the language. But I got off on a tangent. The one substantial addition that I wanted to add to the responses is that as a reviewer, first of all, if the English is incomprehensible, I will not keep reading. And I don't believe I have ever had such a paper sent to me from IAPA for the reasons indicated. However, if I can see some good quality of thought that is masqueraded behind clumsy grammar, then what I will say in my reviewer comments is this is a very promising paper. However, there needs to be some copy editing to improve the expression. But it has to be clear enough so I can take that next step and encourage that.
Right.
Whoops, we're not quite done yet. I promised to get back to you. Do you have something to add?
Yeah, I'll come back.
It was actually Francois' point before, when he first spoke, and he said, if English is your second language, then try and team up or get the English sorted out. Essentially, if you send in a paper with bad English, it's going to take much longer to publish. It's going to go through at least 2 rounds of review, either by the editors initially sending it back to you, or the reviewers, like where Bill said he would continue with the review, but he would say it needs substantial rework. That paper is going to go back to Bill for a second round of review, because something that's been substantially changed, we go back to our reviewers for a second time. I'll tell you this off the cuff, something like 70 or 80% of our papers actually go through a double review process, but some of them go through a triple review process. And that all just takes time. You don't want to do that. So that you speed the process up if it's tidy at the front. You speed up the review process tremendously. Our record is 5 weeks. 5 weeks from the day we received the paper to the day it was published online. Not bad. The reviewers loved it. It was minor changes. The author just got straight onto it. 5 weeks from submission to a publication on the web, and that paper's now been printed in the hard copy as well.
Just a quick experience of one of the papers that I wrote, going back to what Frank was talking about, the cultural context issue. I wrote a paper called The Emperor's New Clothes, and it talked about the effectiveness or not of SEA. And I gave the paper to my students to read, obviously, because it's a fantastic paper to read. But this one Tswana-speaking student came to me and asked me, well, what's The Emperor's New Clothes all about? And nowhere in the paper did I actually explain the fable, because I just assumed everybody who reads the paper would know the fable, because if you, within the European context at least, or North America, you would immediately know what I'm talking about. So that was also sort of a wake-up call. Who doesn't know what The Emperor's New Clothes is all about? The Emperor's New Clothes. It's a fable. Okay. So everybody here knows, okay.
I have taught for the last 15 years in Ecuador, 3 weeks a year, and when I try to use those kinds of phrases, waste. So I've learned to take them out of my vocabulary.
That's a culturally specific expression as well.
Sorry, yes, it goes over their heads.
I think you should continue using those expressions and teach your students to learn what they mean, because that's contributing to their general culture rather than conditioning. What I like to say here is that I am not a native English-speaking person. I also struggle, and I've also struggled with English in the past. And I've worked very hard to be able to speak and write in English. And when I write papers, many times I have to send the papers to an English reviewer so that I can improve my English in the paper. Because I'm concerned about those that are going to read my paper. And if I don't write in English and I write in Portuguese, I could write in Portuguese and send papers to a Portuguese journal or to a French, but I know that the number of people that will read that paper will be much less. So the reason for investing in a good English, in writing a paper, is to enable others to reach your experience. Okay, so just.
Thank you very much, Berta.
You just shifted from an offline review process to online review process. I mean, it's and pretty early days to estimate what has been the impact of that, but has it increased the submission of the paper or the time required for a review, or it has its own initial hiccups and frustrating moments to begin with?
Thank you.
We actually can't give you a clear answer on that one because we've actually temporarily suspended the website, and that was because our publisher fell ill 2 weeks after our website went live, and seriously ill, hospital ill, and he's actually had to retire, and he retires at the end of the year. So from
Sorry, not caused, I hope, by the website.
not caused by the website, caused by his personal things. But so Beechtree, who have been publishing us for the last 10 or 15 years, they're finishing at the end of this year, and we're in the process of finding a new publisher. And we will be going back online, but there are 4 or 5 or more online systems, and there's a very high likelihood, well, probability-wise, it'll be one of the other ones, not the one we went with. So we've decided to suspend that so we don't have 3 lots of submission systems operating in 1 year. So, but it's interesting, we got a few papers in and we got going with it, but the experience from other journals is that submission rates go up. That's what we've been told. So we can expect that an online presence is positive in terms of increasing access and exposure to the journal, and that's one of the attractive features of it.
Just as a follow, I mean, that you have said now the online system is offline. I mean, I was very much wondering why you selected the system that you selected, because there are very many open source systems available, such as the Open Journal system. And probably here is an opportunity to tie up with the university who actually runs the Open Journal system, and they act as an host for the review process as well as for the publishing system.
When we appointed Beechtree, was it 15 years ago? 15 years ago, there was no online journals. So we appointed Beechtree to do this, to print hard copy. And of course, in that 15 years, the world's changed. But the responsibility for publishing was with the publisher. And so it was his choice, ultimately. And he researched, Francois and I know nothing about what he did, but he researched the different platforms, and he was the one paying for it, and he was the one who chose which way to go. What you've just said about open publishing is interesting, because we've had a bit of discussion in the board about, what should we do and so on. So there are other models there. If we went to open publishing, the thing is then we have to do a lot of we have to do the copy-proof editing ourselves, and that's one of the functions that professional publisher has offered. Now, that's just something that has to be thought through. There's an economic and time cost associated with that, and possibly a quality cost. So, yeah. So it's a good question. Yeah.
Any other questions? So I think we may have either 2 more minutes or 12 more minutes. I've forgotten which. Sorry, in fact, I think it's 12. So you have the opportunity for more queries to explore the process, so that when you submit your article next week, if you revise it carefully next month, I guess that's next week too. Anyway, in a few weeks, you'll get the kind of good advice and guidance from the professionals who we have here.
Another question, please. Probably final comment. On my side, I thought I will stand up because it's a great job. to the panel. You have genuinely and honestly shared with us what is expected out of this, explained about the process. On my side, I cannot speak on behalf of the whole audience, but I am sure that they would be in agreement with what I am going to say. Great gratitude, honest opinion, genuine opinion shared with us. And thank you very much for organizing this session. And I would last request, what was the response? You mentioned that you have had 2 or 3 years of this kind of, IAPA application. This session was organized last 2-3 years. Now, what was the response from the previous sessions in terms of the number of audience, whether there has been increase in publishing, increase in the rate of writing papers by the audience, and any feedback that you have received? Okay, it's a great idea that we should move forward and make these changes. But on my side, again, I would thank you and thank you for sharing, and genuinely, especially your comment about, I really appreciate you for your comment. English language editing, the question came up and you tackled that so well, and I felt that my English is a second language. But I'm taken up by your suggestion and the way that you approach this, the whole the grammar. Thank you for the support. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I before I pass it along, I will observe the first time I chaired this session was in 2002. I know it was chaired by Rachel Burge. Before that, I don't know how many times. And in my experience, the number of people has been of this order of magnitude, give or take a factor of 2.
This session is different this year because it's just about IAPA. And Francois and I have only participated once previously, last year. Is that right? And the year before? No, just last year. And we had 3 impact assessment journals here. We invited the other journals, but their editors weren't attending the conference. So it's just become an impact assessment and project appraisal session. And we changed the focus to a bit more about how to write a paper for us. So it's very much about us. The previous sessions were, we didn't mention the journals individually. We really just talked, each of us talked about different parts of the publishing process. So it was similar, but different. And I can't really judge, but all we know is that from our little statistics, the number of papers did go up in the last 12 months. Maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe Francois and I look like nice guys that you want to send your papers to. I think maybe it might have something to do with the fact that we've got the peer-reviewed conference proceedings. They've only been going for 2 years. And we encourage that the people who help with the editing and the publishing of the online papers, where they see a good paper that they think could be expanded and sort of upgraded, if you like, from B to A, up to IAPA, we encourage submission of those. So, and then we also look at those papers and try and keep an eye out for people we can email and say, hey, do you want to make that a paper for the journal? So I can't answer the question, but I'd like to think that the trends are going up.
Okay, my final comment would just be to thank you for being here. And I think what we aim to achieve is just to engage with our audience, which is you. And so if you want to discuss papers afterwards, if we've rejected a paper that you're very unhappy with, I will not be outside. Okay.
Well, thank you for your thanks. I might comment that, notwithstanding what Angus has said, and having been involved in these sessions many times over the years, it really doesn't make any difference which journal it is, to be honest. The processes and how journals work is really much the same. But it is very good that there is this opportunity for us to engage with the editors to understand what the process is. And we hope that journals and journal articles, you need to find a good match. An article has to be matched to the journal. So when papers get rejected, sometimes it's only about whether it's the right journal or not. So think about that. And they're very keen to receive your papers, particularly taking note of the requirements and quality that's required. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank Van Clay, Francois Retief, and Angus Morrison Saunders. If you wish to discuss anything further I'm sure that they will be here for several minutes before we flee to the next session. And as they have said, thank you very much for your very helpful and constructive participation.